Imagine waking up in the heart of Dublin during the hungry 1840s. The streets smell of soot and damp straw, but beneath it all is something sharper, the faint, sickly scent of hunger itself. Your stomach claws with emptiness, and the bread queue stretches like a funeral procession down the lane. Children with hollow cheeks clutch at mothers who have nothing left to give. Horses collapse in their harnesses, their ribs jutting like broken timbers, while desperate hands scramble for the smallest scrap spilled from carts. This isn't just poverty, it is survival measured by crusts and crumbs, with famine stalking every doorway. If these echoes of empty streets and hollow hunger stir you, subscribe and tell me what other forgotten struggles you'd want to hear whispered back to life. We're stepping back into the time of the Great Famine Streets, where Dublin's cobblestones echoed with hunger and despair. Today, you can open your fridge without fear, pour clean water from a tap, and warm yourself by steady heat. But in those years, every dawn was a question of who would endure and who would vanish into silence. You wake to the sound of rain trickling through the cracks of the roof, each drop landing with a hollow tap against the tin pot in the corner. At first you think it might be soup, something boiling, something waiting, but the air is too cold, too sharp. It is only water, gathering in the bottom of the pot, dark and metallic. You pull the blanket tighter, though it is hardly more than a rag, and sit up in the one-room space that four of you now call home. The fire has gone out. There is no turf left, and the hearth is nothing but ashes. The pot by the hearth sits heavy but empty. Its blackened sides remember the days when potatoes boiled so thick the steam filled the room. That was before the blight turned them to mush before they ever met the fire. You run your hand along the rim, the iron still cool, and you can almost hear the bubbling it once held. A sound now replaced by the growl of your own stomach, low and aching, reminding you that yesterday's meal was little more than a crust dipped in water. The streets outside are already stirring. Carts rattle past, their wheels sloshing through puddles, and the voices of neighbors rise, thin and strained, as they prepare to stand in queues that stretch longer every day. Hunger has made the whole city quieter, as if the air itself has grown weary. Even the children no longer play in the alleyways. They cling instead to their mothers, hollow-eyed and silent. You rise slowly, bones stiff from the damp floor, and step to the window. The glass is cracked, patched with cloth, and through it you see the grey sky pressing down on Dublin. Smoke should rise from chimneys at this hour, but most lie cold, the fire's gone out for want of fuel. Across the lane, a woman leans against her doorway, shawl pulled close, her face as pale as the walls behind her. In her arms she holds a child, too small and too still, and for a moment you cannot tell if it sleeps or if hunger has taken it beyond sleep. Back inside, the pot waits. You lift it, heavy though it holds nothing, and set it in the middle of the room. The others stir awake, their eyes following your hands, as if some miracle might appear. But when you lift the lid, there is only air, cold, hollow, cruel. A silence falls over the room, broken only by the sound of your sister's coughing. She looks at you with a question she no longer needs to ask. You set the lid back down, the clatter sharp, and in that sound lies the truth. There is no meal today. Still, you cannot leave it empty. You pour in the rainwater from the tin pot in the corner, listening to the hollow splash. It is thin and bitter, but at least it fills the silence. You light no fire, for there is nothing to burn, but you sit around it anyway, as though the memory of warmth might be enough. The empty pot becomes the center of the room, the shape of hunger itself, heavy and waiting. And so another day begins, not with bread, not with potatoes, but with the sound of rain in an empty pot and the knowledge that you must step out into Dublin's famine streets where hunger waits in every doorway. You step outside before the sun has broken through the mist, your breath rising in pale clouds as you pull your coat thin, worn, more whole than cloth around your shoulders. The cobblestones are slick with rain, shining like black glass under the first weak light of morning. Already, Shapes are moving in the streets, men and women bent forward, shawls and caps pulled low, each carrying the same hope, that this will be the morning they find food. You join them, your steps slow, your stomach hollow. The line forms early on the quay where the charity kitchen promises ladles of thin broth. By the time you arrive, the queue already snakes along the street, a line of shadows pressed against the damp stone walls. There is no chatter, only the sound of shuffling feet, of coughs rattling from deep in the chest, of a child whimpering as its mother hushes it with nothing more than her hand. The smell of the river drifts up, salty and sour, carrying with it the rot of refuse thrown from the lanes above. It mingles with the sharper smell of coal smoke, but even that has grown faint. There is little coal left for the poor, and most chimneys lie cold. You hear the gulls crying overhead, circling, waiting for scraps that never come. Their cries pierce the silence of the crowd like accusations. You stand behind a man whose coat hangs in strips, his hat pulled so low you cannot see his eyes. Beside him, a girl with bare feet clutches at his sleeve, her toes white with cold against the stones. She leans against him, too tired to stand on her own, and you realize she is no older than your sister, though thinner, her cheeks hollowed into sharp planes. When the man coughs, the girl flinches, as if the sound itself were another blow to endure. Time moves differently here. Minutes stretch like hours as the queue inches forward, each step carrying you closer to the promise of broth. The doors to the kitchen remain shut, guarded by men who shout for order, though there is none left to keep. Those at the front wait with the same stillness as those at the end, because hunger has stripped away even the energy for impatience. The sky begins to pale, turning the river to dull silver, and the church bell tolls across the city. The sound rolls over the rooftops, heavy and slow, reminding everyone of time but offering no comfort. You shift on your feet, cold seeping into your bones, stomach clawing, mouth dry. Around you, no one speaks. Silence binds the crowd together more tightly than ropes. At last, the doors creak open. The smell reaches you first, thin, watery soup that might once have touched a bone or a handful of barley. The line shuffles forward, but you know before you taste it that the broth will not be enough. It never is. Yet you step forward anyway, because hunger drives you, because the queue at dawn is the only hope left. When the ladle finally hovers above your bowl, the steam rising faintly in the morning air, you hold it as if it were treasure. Thin, bitter, almost flavorless, but it is something. And in Dublin's Famine Streets, something is the difference between rising tomorrow and not rising at all. The walk home from the soup queue feels longer than it is, your legs dragging as if each step must be pulled from the stones. The thin broth sloshes inside your stomach, warm for a moment but already fading, leaving behind only a sharper hunger. The streets are quieter now, emptied after the morning's ritual of waiting. You pass closed doors, shuttered windows, faces peering out with the same question that presses in every corner of the city: who has food today and who does not? When you return to the room, the air is damp, the fire still cold. Your family stirs as you step inside, eyes rising at once to the bundle you carry in your hand. It is no loaf, no basket, only a small crust wrapped in cloth, bought with the last coin scraped together from a neighbor's mercy. You set it on the table as though it were gold. The silence that follows is heavy, reverent, like the pause before prayer. The crust is hard, its edges sharp, and you can feel with your fingers how stale it has grown. Yet when you unwrap it, the smell of bread still lingers, faint but rich enough to make every stomach tighten. You tear it slowly, carefully, the dry crumbs scattering across the table, each piece falling smaller than you hoped. Still, you divide it: one portion for your mother, one for your sister, one for your brother, one for yourself. Equal, though each is barely larger than a coin. Your mother lifts her piece first. She holds it in her hand as if debating whether to eat it or save it, but your sister's eyes follow the movement, wide and pleading. Without a word, your mother presses her share into the child's palm. "Eat," she whispers, though her own lips tremble. Your sister bites quickly, chewing though the crust is hard, her teeth working slowly until she swallows. The smallest sigh escapes her relief, fleeting but real. Your brother takes his piece and tucks it away in his pocket. He says nothing, but you know he means to save it for later, perhaps for night when the hunger sharpens most. The thought of it waiting gives him strength. You break your own portion in half, slipping one piece toward your mother when she looks away. She notices, of course, but pretends she does not. Pride bends in famine, though never fully breaks. The crust moves from hand to hand, and in that act, something greater than food takes shape. For a few moments, the room feels less empty, the silence less cruel. The pot in the corner still waits with nothing inside, the fire still refuses to burn, but there is a kind of warmth in the sharing. Hunger cannot be silenced, but it can be carried together. When the last crumbs are gone, you lick your fingers for the taste that lingers, dry and faint, but precious. Around you, the others lean back, eyes closing, bodies settling into a calm that might be mistaken for fullness but is only exhaustion. One crust, 4 mouths, one more day endured. In Dublin's Famine Streets, survival is measured not in meals but in moments like these, when hunger bends to the will of a family that still chooses to share. Morning air drifts through the narrow lane, damp and heavy, carrying with it a scent you have come to know too well. It clings to every corner of Dublin now, a smell that seeps into shawls, into hair, into the very stone of the houses. It is the smell of rot, the sickness of the potato turned to black mush, the ghost of meals that will never be. You walk toward the market, though you know there is little to find. The stalls that once held sacks of potatoes stacked high now stand nearly empty. A few burlap bags remain, their sides sagging, their contents spilling in soft, foul heaps. You stop near one, watching as a farmer tips the ruined tubers into the street. Their skins collapse under his touch, their flesh oozing, black and wet, the stench so sharp it burns the back of your throat. Around you people hover. A woman kneels, her shawl dragging in the muck as she digs through the pile, searching for one that might still be firm. Her hands come away slimed, her face twisting as she brings a half-rotted potato to her nose. She shakes her head, drops it back, and tries again. Others join her, children crouching, men leaning low, all hoping for the rare chance of a piece not yet spoiled. The smell grows thicker as the heap spreads, carried on the breeze that drifts down the alley. It settles in your lungs, and you know you will carry it with you long after you leave. Even at night, even in dreams, it will return, an invisible reminder of what has been lost. You remember when the smell of potatoes was different, earthy, warm, filling the air with promise as they boiled in pots across the city. That smell once meant comfort, safety, a meal to quiet the body. Now it is only decay, the odor of famine, proof that the soil itself has betrayed you. At the edge of the lane, a child clutches a half-rotten potato to his chest. His mother pulls him back, whispering harshly, but the boy resists, eyes fixed on his prize. She pries it from his hands and throws it aside, the black pulp splattering against the wall. He cries, thin and rasping, the sound merging with the corps of crows circling overhead. They, too, have learned to follow the rot. You turn away, pressing your sleeve against your face, though the cloth does little to shield you. The smell follows, filling every breath. It reminds you that the famine is not just hunger, but corruption, creeping into the very core of the crop that once fed millions. Each sack that empties into the gutter is not just a loss of food, but another family's hope crushed underfoot. By the time you reach home, the scent still clings to you. It seeps into the room, into the empty pot, into the silence that waits. Your sister asks if you've brought anything, and you shake your head. The smell of rot answers for you. It tells the truth more clearly than words ever could. And as night falls, the city sinks into darkness with that same sour weight pressing down, reminding all who breathe it that tomorrow will be no different. The night is restless, though no storm rattles the windows, no wind moans through the chimney. What keeps you awake is a softer sound, quick and sharp, rising and fading in the dark. Scratches, tiny claws skittering behind the boards, in the beams above, beneath the broken floor. The rats have come again. You lie still, every muscle tight, ears straining to follow them. Their movements weave through the silence like whispers. At first you tell yourself they are only in the walls, not here in the room, but then you hear the distinct clatter of a loose cup, the faint drag of a tail across stone. Your stomach twists not only with hunger, but with the bitter knowledge that they have more strength than you. The children stir. Your sister whimpers, clutching at the edge of her blanket. She has grown used to hunger, but not to this. You whisper that it is nothing, only the house creaking, but the sound betrays you again, a sudden squeal, high and sharp, as one rat fights another. The walls themselves seem alive, pulsing with unseen bodies. In the corner, the pot sits empty as ever. Once, it held scraps enough to keep them away, the scent of boiling potatoes masking the trace of grain or peel. Now there is nothing to distract them. Hunger has made the rats bolder. They come searching where people starve, following the same scent of survival that you follow through the streets each day. A shape darts across the floor. You see it in the dim light that seeps through the cracks of the shutter. Sleek, grey, quick. Your brother lurches up with a stick, swinging too late, the wood smacking only the stones. The rat vanishes into a hole near the hearth, its claws scratching a path back into the shadows. The sound echoes longer than it should, a taunt, a reminder of what powerlessness feels like. You know, some families have resorted to catching them. Hunger strips away disgust as surely as it strips away strength. A rat roasted on a spit is better than death, some say, though the sickness it carries often follows after. You wonder how long before your own family considers it. Your mother says never, but her eyes linger each time one scurries past. The scratching grows louder as the night deepens. It is no longer just one, but many, a colony pressing close, as if the walls themselves are made of living hunger. Sleep becomes impossible. You curl tighter on the floor, pulling the ragged blanket over your head, but the sound penetrates cloth and bone alike. It becomes part of you, that gnawing, that ceaseless search for what little remains. When dawn finally breaks, the noise fades. The rats retreat to their nests, sated or waiting. You rise with aching limbs, eyes stinging from sleeplessness. On the floor you see their traces, droppings in the corners, a gnawed crust left from yesterday, teeth marks etched into wood. The walls are scarred like your own body, worn thin from the endless scraping of survival. You step outside into the grey light, the city stirring once more. But even as the street swallows you, the sound follows in your ears, claws in the dark, scratching, always scratching, like hunger itself, living in the walls. The morning begins with a slip of paper, no larger than a hand, but heavier than coin. It lies folded in your pocket as you step into the damp air, its edges softened by fingers that have held it too tightly. A soup ticket promised by the parish is not food itself, but the chance at food, a fragile promise printed in ink. You walk the streets of Dublin with others like you, shawls pulled close, coats too thin for the season. The air is cold, the kind of cold that sinks into bones already hollowed by hunger. Every step feels slower, as if your body has grown too heavy for your legs. Yet the thought of the ticket keeps you moving, one foot before the other, down streets where doors hang open to rooms as bare as your own. The ticket is supposed to carry dignity. The parish men say it keeps the queues from disorder, that it spares the weak from being trampled. But holding it, you feel only shame. The ink brands you as needy, as desperate, as less than whole. You clutch it in your hand anyway, because pride cannot fill an empty stomach. The line for the kitchen stretches already around the corner when you arrive. You fall into place, the ticket damp now from the sweat of your palm. Ahead of you, a woman cradles a child whose head lolls against her shoulder, eyes half-lidded, lips cracked. She strokes the child's hair and whispers words you cannot hear. Behind you, an old man leans on a stick, breathing hard with each step forward. The queue inches closer, and the smell of the broth reaches you, thin, watery, but rich enough to draw tears. It carries the faint scent of barley, of cabbage boiled down to strings. Your stomach growls loud in your chest, and for a moment you fear those around you heard. Yet no one looks. Hunger is too familiar here. Its sounds are as common as coughs. At the door, a man in a dark coat holds out his hand. You give him the ticket, trying not to meet his eyes. He glances at it, nods, and lets you through. The slip of paper is gone now, exchanged for a bowl of steaming liquid. You step forward, clutching it with both hands, careful not to spill a drop. The first sip burns your tongue, but you swallow quickly, the warmth sliding down your throat like life itself. It is thin, barely more than flavored water, yet in this moment it tastes like wealth. You drink slowly, stretching it, letting each mouthful linger as though it could trick your stomach into believing there is more. Around you, others do the same. Some gulp too fast and cough. Some dip crusts into the broth to soften them. No one speaks. The only sound is the scrape of spoons against bowls and the sigh of those who know this is the best meal they will see for days. When the bowl is empty, you lick the rim, chasing the last drops. The warmth fades quickly, replaced by the familiar ache of hunger. But for a brief hour you feel stronger. The ticket is gone, the shame remains, but the soup has bought you another day. In Famine, Dublin, another day is everything. You see them first at the corner of the lane, gathered in silence where once their laughter rang. Children, though their faces look older than their years, their eyes shadowed with a weight too heavy for shoulders so small. They do not chase hoops or play stick and ball anymore. They sit hunched against the damp stone walls, knees drawn to their chests, watching the world with hollow stares. One boy gazes at you as you pass, and the look cuts deeper than words ever could. His eyes are wide, ringed with purple shadows, the spark of childhood long extinguished. They do not ask with voice, but they beg all the same, pleading for bread, for warmth, for something to believe in. You want to look away, but you cannot. His eyes hold you fast, mirrors of the famine itself. A girl sits beside him, hair tangled, shawl too thin to keep the chill from her bones. She does not speak either, but her eyes follow a cart rattling by, piled high with sacks of grain bound for the port. Her gaze burns with something beyond hunger, confusion, betrayal. She sees food leaving the city while her belly shrinks against her spine. She is too young to understand trade, too young to know of landlords and exports, but her eyes know injustice when they see it. In another alley, smaller children crawl on the ground, searching cracks for scraps fallen from baskets. Their eyes scan every stone, every gutter. When one finds a crust hardened to leather, the others swarm, and a fight breaks out. Tiny fists swing, tears stream, and the prize is barely a mouthful, yet they clutch at it as if it were treasure. Their eyes flash with desperation, then soften with shame when they see you watching. Inside the tenement rooms, children lie on pallets, their eyes dull, half-closed, feverish. Some no longer cry, too weak for even that. A mother strokes her child's forehead, whispering songs once meant to soothe but now only to ease the passage from life into silence. The child's eyes, glazed and glassy, drift between this world and the next. You watch and feel the heaviness in your chest. Knowing the famine has stolen more than food, it has stolen childhood itself. The streets of Dublin echo with those eyes. Every doorway holds them, every corner reveals them. They follow you as you walk, reminding you of what waits in your own home, of the younger ones watching you for answers you do not have. Hunger writes its story, not only in empty pots or silent hearths, but in children's eyes, too wide, too knowing, too still. You wonder how they will remember these days, if they survive them at all. Will their eyes ever shine again with games and mischief? Or will they always carry this shadow, this silent testimony of the famine streets? The thought lingers long after you pass, for those eyes never leave you. They stay fixed in memory, sharper than any hunger, heavier than any stone. And so, as night falls, the city does not echo with laughter or song. It echoes only with the silence of children's eyes, watching, waiting, enduring. The lane is narrow, darker than the streets around it, its stones slick with damp that never seems to dry. You walk it slowly, the air pressing heavy against your chest. Here, sound seems to die quickly, footsteps muffled, voices hushed as though the walls themselves know what waits within. This is the coffin lane, and its name is no figure of speech. Along the wall, stacked in rows, lie the pine boxes. Some are small, no longer than a child's arm span, others longer, heavier, waiting to be carried. The wood is rough, hastily nailed together, without polish or carving. There is no time for ornament, no money for paint. Death has become too common, too relentless. The boxes are needed faster than they can be made. You stop at one stack, the smell of fresh-cut wood mingling with something darker that seeps from the cracks. Men pass by carrying another coffin on their shoulders, their faces grey, their bodies bent with more than weight. They set it down with care, though their hands are shaking, and turn away quickly, for the sight of so many is unbearable. Mothers come here too, their shawls pulled tight, their eyes red from nights without sleep. You see one now, a woman cradling a bundle wrapped in cloth. She kneels by the stack, pressing her forehead to the box, her lips moving in prayer too faint to hear. When she rises, her arms are empty. The bundle has been placed inside, another soul folded into pine. Children linger at the edge of the lane, staring. Their faces are blank, unreadable. They have seen too much to cry, too much to ask. The coffins are no longer shocking to them. They are part of the city's furniture, as ordinary as carts or chimneys. Yet their eyes dart away when one is carried past, as if refusing to follow where it leads. You step further in, the silence broken only by the hammering of nails. A carpenter works quickly, his saw rasping, his mallet striking. He does not look at the boxes once they are done. He moves from one to the next, his hands raw, his eyes fixed only on the wood. His labor is constant, for death does not rest. Each night more bodies arrive, each dawn more boxes are needed. The lane narrows to a courtyard, where the dead are loaded onto carts. A horse shifts uneasily in its harness, stamping its hooves against the stones. The driver pulls at the reins, muttering under his breath, though his own face is pale. The coffins are stacked 2-3 high, until the cart groans with their weight. Then the wheels creak, and the cart moves off toward the graveyard, leaving the lane ready to fill again. You stand still, your breath caught in your throat. The sight of so many boxes, so many silent rooms of wood, chills you more than the cold air ever could. It is not just the dead they hold, but the measure of a city's grief. The famine is not only in the hunger, not only in the rot, it is here, in the coffin lane, where hope itself lies nailed shut. The morning begins with a decision that weighs heavier than hunger itself. In the corner of the room hangs the last piece of worth in the family, a shawl, once woven with care, now thinned by years of use. It has warmed shoulders through bitter winters, wrapped infants close to their mothers' hearts, carried the scent of hearth smoke and the memory of better days. Now it must be sold, for there is nothing else left to give. You lift it gently, feeling the threads slip between your fingers. The wool is worn but soft, patched in places, frayed at the edges. Your mother had mended it more than once, her stitches neat but visible, each line a mark of survival. She watches you as you fold it, her face lined with worry, her eyes carrying both shame and resignation. She does not speak, she does not need to. You both know what this means, warmth traded for bread. The streets of Dublin are already crowded when you step outside. Others walk with the same burden, bundles hidden under arms, scarves, coats, rings and keepsakes carried toward the pawnbroker's door. Hunger has turned heirlooms into coin, memory into survival. You walk among them, clutching the shawl as though it were alive, as though parting with it might wound you. The pawnbroker's shop sits at the edge of the lane, its windows dark, its door worn by countless hands. Inside, The air smells of dust and iron. Shelves sag with items left behind, candlesticks dulled with tarnish, books stacked high, coats hanging limp, boots missing laces. Each piece tells the same story: something once loved, now surrendered. Behind the counter, the broker waits, his eyes quick and practiced, measuring worth not in memory but in coin. You lay the shawl before him. He lifts it without ceremony, turning it over, running his fingers across the frayed edges. He does not see your mother's careful stitching, the winters survived, the infants cradled. He sees only wool, old and thin. He names a price low, too low, but you nod anyway, for there is no bargaining when the stomach aches. He counts the coins with deliberate care, dropping each one into your palm. They are cold, hard, and few, but they are something. As you leave, the shawl remains behind, folded neatly, placed upon a shelf among strangers. It is no longer yours. The weight in your pocket feels wrong, as though you have carried away less than you gave. Outside, the city moves on, carts clattering past, children crying in doorways, the air thick with hunger. You close your hand around the coins, trying to believe they will buy more than they can. That evening, bread sits on the table, torn into small pieces, divided as fairly as the crust allows. The family eats in silence, the bread dry but precious. Yet as you chew, you notice the cold pressing deeper into the room, the absence of the shawl heavy as stone. Your mother pulls her shoulders tighter against the air, her face pale in the dim light. The hunger eases for a night, but the loss lingers. The pawned shawl is more than cloth surrendered. It is a piece of the past traded away, a comfort stripped from the future. In famine Dublin, survival demands such sacrifices, until nothing remains but memory and cold. The night has left the room damp, every surface slick with the slow seep of water. You wake to the sound of dripping, steady as a heartbeat, falling from the patched roof above. The only thing standing between you and the sky is a stretch of sackcloth, nailed and tied, sagging under the weight of rain. It was once coarse and sturdy, meant for holding grain, but now it serves as your ceiling, and the rain does not forgive. You reach out and touch the wall where the cloth hangs. The water bleeds through, darkening the weave, drops sliding down in crooked lines. The smell of mildew fills the air, sharp and sour, mingling with the chill that creeps into your bones. Each gust of wind pushes more rain inside, the sackcloth swelling, then emptying in sudden bursts that splash onto the floor. Your sister stirs beside you, her blanket damp, her hair clinging to her face. She shivers, eyes half open, and curls into herself. The cough that escapes her chest is wet, rattling. Your mother tries to shift her father from the drip, moving her to the dry corner, though there is little dryness left. Every corner of the room carries its own leak, its own stain. The fire is out again, the wood is soaked, and the turf you once used has long since burned away. Smoke stains remain on the hearthstone, but no warmth rises there now. The rain hisses softly as it lands in the ashes, like the sound of a pot just before it boils. You almost imagine food again, steam, broth, potatoes bubbling, but the illusion dies quickly. Outside, the rain falls harder, pounding the city. The alley fills with rivulets of water, carrying scraps of straw, mud, and refuse. Neighbors lean from their doorways, shawls pulled tight, watching the sky with weary faces. They do not curse the storm. It is too common, too endless. Instead, they adjust their own sackcloth patches, their own roofs of straw and wood, each one fighting a battle that will never be won. Back inside, the sackcloth begins to sag dangerously, a pool of water gathering in its center. You grab a bowl and hold it underneath, catching the steady drip as it breaks through. Soon the bowl is full, but the leak does not slow. You empty it into the pot, then set it back again, the rhythm of filling and emptying becoming the rhythm of survival. Rain into bowl, bowl into pot, pot into silence. By afternoon the floor is damp, blankets are wet, and your mother's hands are raw from wringing out cloth, yet the sackcloth still holds thin, patched, beaten, but still holding. It becomes more than a ceiling. It becomes a symbol of the fight to keep one step ahead of ruin. Each drop that falls is another reminder that the famine is not only hunger, but cold and wet and endless weariness. When night comes, the rain does not stop. You lie awake, listening to it drum against the sackcloth, each drop echoing in your chest. The sound is steady, merciless, but in its rhythm there is also survival. So long as the sackcloth holds, so long as the rain does not break through entirely, the family endures. It is not comfort, but it is enough to face another day on Dublin's famine streets. The summons comes with no kindness, only an order scratched onto a slip of paper: work or starve. You carry it with you at dawn, your feet dragging along muddy streets until you reach the yard. The gate is iron, black and cold, and beyond it lies the sound of hammers striking stone. A steady rhythm, heavy as a drumbeat, fills the air. The yard is wide, littered with heaps of rock. Great slabs of granite lie stacked like the bones of giants, waiting to be broken into smaller pieces. Men and women shuffle inside, their faces gaunt, their clothes hanging loose from wasted frames. They grip hammers with blistered hands, shoulders already bent from yesterday's labor. The overseer paces among them, his boots clean, his eyes sharp. He carries no hammer himself. You are handed one wooden handle, iron head, heavier than it should be for a body so weak. The overseer points, and you move to the pile, lifting the hammer above your head and bringing it down. The strike rings out, sharp and metallic, shivering up your arms. Chips fly, dust rising into the cold air. You lift again, swing again, the rhythm carving itself into your bones. The work is endless. For every stone broken, another waits. The purpose is never explained. Some say the pieces are used for roads, others that they are carted away only to be replaced with more. A cruel cycle meant to grind down the poor as surely as the hammer grinds the rock. Whether the stones matter or not, the overseer watches, his eyes counting each strike. To falter is to be marked. Around you the sound never stops. Hammers rise and fall in unison, striking like 1,000 heartbeats. Men grunt with each blow, women bite their lips, children swing awkwardly, their arms too small for the task. Dust clings to skin and clothes, coating mouths until every breath tastes of grit. The sun never breaks through the clouds, and time itself seems to vanish. At midday, a whistle blows. You step back, hands raw, shoulders aching. A crust of bread is passed out, hard as stone itself. You eat it quickly, though it does little more than quiet the stomach for a moment. Then the hammer is in your hands again, and the sound begins once more: strike, crack, until thought itself is drowned out. By evening, your arms tremble so badly you can barely lift the hammer. Blisters split open, blood seeping into the wood. The overseer finally calls the day's end. Tools are dropped, shoulders slump, bodies shuffle back toward the gate. No one speaks. Voices have been beaten out by stone and silence. You carry the ache home with you, the weight of the hammer still ghosting your hands. When you lie down, eyes closed, the sound does not leave. It echoes through your skull, the endless rhythm of the stonebreaker's yard. Work brought you another day, but at a cost carved deep into bone and spirit. In famine Dublin, survival itself feels like punishment, measured not in food but in blows of iron against stone. It begins with a sound you dread, the slow creak of wheels echoing along the cobblestones. The cholera cart moves through Dublin at dawn, before the streets are crowded, before the day can pretend at normal life. Its iron-rimmed wheels groan as if burdened, not only with weight but with sorrow. You hear it before you see it, and already your chest tightens. When it turns the corner, the horse appears first, its ribs sharp against its hide, its head drooping low. Behind it rattles the cart, a plain wooden bed, sides blackened with damp. Upon it lie shapes covered in cloth, some still, some shifting faintly with the last breaths of fever. The cloth does little to hide the truth. A hand slips free here, a bare foot there, grey and swollen, mottled with the marks of disease. The driver sits hunched, scarf wrapped around his mouth, eyes hollow. He does not call out, does not ring a bell. The sound of the wheels is enough. Doors open silently along the lane. Men emerge carrying burdens wrapped in sheets, women following behind with shawls pulled tight, their faces streaked with tears. They lay the bodies gently on the cart, whispering prayers too low to hear. Some cross themselves, others simply bow their heads and turn away, too broken for ritual. Children watch from doorways, their eyes wide and unblinking. They clutch at skirts and sleeves, their faces pale. They do not speak, but their silence holds questions no parent can answer. Why does the cart come here? Will it come again tomorrow? Will it stop at their door? The smell follows the cart, sour and sharp, the odor of sickness mingling with damp air. You pull your sleeve to your face, but it does little. The stench seeps through cloth, clings to your skin, burrows into your lungs. It is the smell of a city drowning not only in hunger, but in plague, the two weaving together until no family is spared. The cart moves on, rattling slowly, gathering more with each turn. It stops at the end of the street where the fever ward waits, a building already filled beyond its walls. The doors open, and the cart unloads. The dead carried one way, the dying another. No ceremony, no names, recorded only bodies, sorted into silence. You stand watching until the horse pulls again, the wheels starting their slow groan as the cart continues its route. You know it will pass again tomorrow and the day after, as long as the fever burns through Dublin's alleys. You know too that everyone who hears it holds the same thought: who will ride it next? That night, when you try to sleep, the sound does not fade. In your dreams the wheels turn endlessly, creaking against stone, carrying away neighbors, strangers, perhaps even kin. The cholera cart becomes more than wood and horse and wheel. It becomes famine's shadow, the sound of a city breaking, the measure of lives lost too quickly to count. And as long as it rolls, Dublin lies in mourning. The day begins with a queue like any other, a line of hollow faces stretched along the cobblestones, bowls and tins clutched in trembling hands. You stand among them, shoulder to shoulder with men and women who have waited since dawn for the ladle of thin broth. The smell drifts from the kitchen, a hint of barley, a trace of meat boiled long past flavor, and it pulls the crowd tighter, as if hunger itself were binding you all together. At first, the line is quiet. Coughs echo, children whimper, boots scrape against stone, but then the overseer steps forward, his voice sharp, announcing there is not enough for all. A murmur runs through the queue, low at first, then sharper, growing like a storm. People press forward, bowls raised, their bodies swaying like waves. Hunger has stripped patience bare. You feel the shift before it breaks. A man at the front pushes, shouting that his child will not wait another day. Others echo him, voices rising, fists shaking. The guards try to hold them back, but the press of bodies is too strong. The door creaks under the weight, then bursts open, the crowd flooding inside. The air fills with cries and the crash of pots overturning. You are swept with the current, pulled into the kitchen, where kettles steam and barrels line the walls. Hands snatch at ladles, at buckets, at anything that holds liquid. A pot tips, spilling broth across the floor. People drop to their knees, scooping it with bare hands, drinking from the stones. The guards strike out with batons, but the crowd does not scatter. Hunger has made them fearless, desperate. Women shield their children, men swing sticks, even the young claw forward for a mouthful. You see a boy no older than 10 lift a dripping ladle to his lips, only to have it torn away. He cries out, his voice lost in the roar. The smell of smoke rises as a lamp topples, flames licking at a rag. For a moment, panic threatens to replace fury, but the fire sputters out in the spilled broth. Still, the chaos grows. A barrel is rolled toward the door, sloshing as hands claw at its rim. The overseer shouts for calm, but his voice is drowned by the thunder of bodies. You find yourself with a cup, filled halfway before the ladle slips from your grasp. You clutch it to your chest, the broth scalding hot, guarding it like treasure. Around you people surge and fight, but you hold fast, drinking quickly before it can be stolen. The liquid burns down your throat, bitter but alive. Outside, soldiers arrive. Their boots strike the stones, their rifles gleam. The crowd begins to scatter, bowls abandoned, broth spilling into the gutter. The guards seize men by the collar, dragging them away. The overseer shouts that order is restored, but the truth is plain. Order has broken. Hunger has turned the city against itself. When the street finally quiets, the air still smells of broth and smoke. Empty bowls lie in the mud, some cracked, some overturned. You walk away with nothing but the taste still clinging to your tongue, knowing it may be days before you find it again. The soup riots leave behind no victory, only proof of how thin the line is between silence and fury in famine Dublin. The door creaks open, and for a moment you expect warmth to spill out, light, laughter, the smell of smoke and ale. Once, this doorway had been an escape from hunger and cold, a place where voices rose with songs and quarrels, where the clink of mugs carried through the night. But now, stepping inside, you find only silence. The pub is dim, its fire long extinguished, the hearth cold. Benches line the walls, but few sit upon them. A handful of men hunch over empty mugs, their shoulders bowed, their faces shadowed. The smell of stale beer lingers faintly, but it is overwhelmed by the sharper odor of damp clothes and unwashed bodies. The air carries no cheer, only weariness. The barkeep stands behind the counter, polishing the same glass again and again, though no ale flows from the taps. His eyes meet yours briefly, then slide away, as if ashamed to offer nothing. Once he served foaming mugs, steaming bowls, a plate of bread with butter thick on its crust. Now his shelves are bare. Bottles stand empty like hollow bones, and the casks in the back have been dry for weeks. You sit on a bench, the wood rough beneath you. The silence presses close, broken only by the occasional cough or the shuffle of boots against the floor. No one sings, no one argues. Even whispers are rare. It feels as though the famine has stolen voices, along with food, leaving behind only the shells of men. In the corner, two musicians once played fiddle and flute, their music rolling out into the night, pulling feet into dances, lifting spirits higher than the drink itself. The instruments still rest there, leaning against the wall, but their strings hang loose, untuned, forgotten. Dust gathers where once the air shook with reels and jigs. A man at the counter raises his mug, but nothing spills from it. He sets it down again with a hollow thud and bows his head. His friend beside him stares at the door as though waiting for someone who will not come. Their silence speaks louder than words. The pub has become a meeting place only for grief. The barkeep finally breaks the quiet. "Water," he mutters, pouring from a jug into a chipped cup. The sound of liquid striking pottery is louder than it should be, echoing through the room. A man drinks quickly, as though pretending it is stronger than it is, and wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. No one laughs at the act, no one pretends. You look around and realize the silence is not empty. It is full of hunger, of sorrow, of memories of nights when this place was alive. Each man carries his own shadow, each woman her own weight, and together they fill the pub not with cheer but with quiet despair. When you leave, the door creaks shut behind you, and the street feels no different from the room you left. The famine has silenced not only the kitchens and hearths, but the pubs as well. The laughter of Dublin, once loud enough to shake the walls, now lies buried beneath hunger. The city has become a silent pub, its song gone cold. You hear it before you see her, the slow, uneven sound of feet dragging across cobblestones. The rhythm is broken, a shuffle rather than a stride, each step heavy as if the stones themselves pull back against her. When she comes into view, she is small, a child no more than 7 or 8, her hair tangled, her shawl too thin for the sharp Dublin wind. She moves without direction, without companion. the orphan's step marking her place in the famine streets. Her eyes are wide but unfocused, staring ahead without truly seeing. She carries no bundle, no bowl, nothing at all. Only her bare feet slap against the wet stones, leaving faint prints that vanish almost as soon as they appear. Once, you think, those steps might have followed a mother's or father's stride, quickening to match, slowing to linger. Now they echo alone, and the sound of it chills more deeply than the air. Others notice her too. A woman selling rags pauses, her hand frozen mid-gesture, her lips parting as if to call out, but she lowers her eyes and looks away. A man with a sack of coal shifts aside, muttering, though his gaze lingers on the child's hollow face. Everyone sees her, but no one stops her. Hunger has turned compassion thin. Each family is its own drowning ship, and few have the strength to pull another aboard. The girl pauses near a doorway where a baker once sold warm loaves, the smell of fresh bread curling into the streets. She leans against the wall, pressing her ear to the wood as if listening for something long gone. Her fingers trace the stone, lingering on cracks, and for a moment you think she will knock, but she does not. She pushes off the wall and drifts on, her steps as slow as before. Children should run, should skip, should fill the air with laughter. This step, this dragging, broken step, belongs not to a child but to one left too soon in the world. It is the sound of hunger wearing down bone, of grief heavy in the chest, of a path without hand to guide it. Every shuffle speaks the words her lips cannot. Lost, lost, lost. At the edge of the market, she stops again. A cart rattles by, its wheels splashing through puddles, and she watches it disappear. The crowd moves around her as though she were not there, as though her body were already a shadow. You see her bend suddenly, snatching at something on the ground, a crust trampled into the mud. She lifts it, eyes bright for a moment, then dims again as she realizes it is too soaked, too foul to eat. She drops it, and her step resumes, heavier now, slower still. As dusk falls, the orphan's step echoes faintly down the alleys, swallowed by the city's silence. You listen until it fades, but the sound does not leave you. It lingers in your chest, in the stones beneath your feet, in the air itself. For in famine Dublin, hunger speaks not only through cries or riots, but through the lonely rhythm of one child's step, carrying forward with no one left to follow. You approach the building at dawn, its windows shuttered, its doors marked with a strip of black cloth. The fever ward stands at the edge of the city like a warning, a place whispered of in alleys and avoided by those who can. Yet when sickness takes hold, when the skin burns and the breath rattles, families bring their loved ones here, because there is nowhere else to go. The smell reaches you before the door does a sour mix of sweat, vomit, and decay, heavy as fog. Inside, the air is thick and close, carrying the low hum of suffering. Rows of straw pallets line the floor, each one occupied by bodies too weak to rise. Some moan softly, others lie still, their eyes staring into nothing. The sound of coughing fills the space, sharp and relentless, broken only by the wet gasp of lungs drowning from within. You walk carefully, your feet crunching on straw scattered across the stone floor. Nurses move among the sick, their faces pale with exhaustion. They carry bowls of water, cloths, and small bottles of medicine that run out faster than they can be refilled. They whisper comfort, though their voices are nearly drowned by the chorus of sickness. Their hands shake, not only from weariness but from fear, for they too are not safe from the fever's grip. At one pallet, a child clutches her mother's hand, though the mother no longer responds. The child's eyes are wide, fever-bright, her lips cracked. She whispers something again and again, but the words are too faint to hear. When the nurse bends down, she gently prizes the child's fingers free, moving her to another pallet. The mother is covered with a sheet, the form of her body vanishing into white. In the corner, a priest kneels beside a man whose breath comes shallow and fast. He murmurs prayers in Latin, the words flowing like a river. The man's eyes flicker, then close, his chest falling one final time. The priest makes the sign of the cross and moves on, for there are many more waiting. The fever does not choose. It takes children and elders, mothers and fathers, the strong and the weak. Some arrive walking, clutching at arms for support, and within days they lie motionless, their places quickly filled by others. The ward is never empty. Death opens space, and sickness fills it again. You notice the silence between coughs, the hush that falls each time a sheet is pulled over a still body. It is not a silence of peace, but of fear, the knowledge that every breath could be the last. Families linger at the door, peering in but afraid to step too close. Some whisper names, hoping for answers, but the nurses are too busy to respond. When you leave, the air outside feels colder, cleaner, though the smell of the ward clings to your clothes, to your skin. You breathe deeply, grateful for the open sky, yet the sound of coughing follows you down the street. The fever ward holds its patients within walls, but its shadow spills over the city, reminding all who pass that famine brings not only hunger but sickness, and that here survival is decided breath by breath. The paper feels fragile in your hand, as though it might tear with the smallest breath. A ship ticket, thin, creased, stamped with ink that has already begun to fade. It is not food, not warmth, not medicine, but it carries a promise: escape. Beyond the quays, beyond the grey waters of the Liffey, lies the chance of survival in a land across the sea. At least, that is what the whispers say. You stand in the queue outside the ticket office, surrounded by faces carved by hunger and shadowed with desperation. Mothers clutch children to their hips. Fathers grip the shoulders of sons too weak to stand on their own. Each family presses forward, clutching coins scraped together from pawned shawls, sold tools, borrowed sums. Every clink of metal on the counter inside is hope paid out in silver. Yet not all will walk away with a ticket. The air inside the office is thick, hot, smelling of damp coats and sweat. Men behind the counter call names, scribble notes, count coins, and pass out slips of paper, each one exchanged for a future that no one can truly see. Some weep when the paper touches their hands, others simply tuck it close to their chest, faces set with grim resolve. You watch as a neighbor you once knew well steps away, holding her ticket like a relic. Her children cluster around her, asking when the ship will sail, asking if there will be bread in America. She does not answer. She only pulls them close, her eyes wet but unblinking. Behind her, another man slams his fist against the counter when told his money is not enough. He is pushed aside, his cries swallowed by the crowd. When it is your turn, you lay the coins down, one by one, hearing each drop against the wood. The clerk's hands move quickly, sweeping them up, scratching marks across a ledger. Then he slides the paper toward you. It is smaller than you imagined, lighter, almost nothing at all. Yet your heart beats faster as you hold it, as if your very body believes the promise it carries. Outside, the quays are crowded with those clutching the same fragile slips. Some speak of Boston, others of New York, others of Canada. Their voices tremble with hope and fear, for the voyage is long, and many do not survive it. Still, the thought of leaving famine behind drives them forward. The thought of land where fields are green and full, where potatoes grow unblighted, where bread is more than a crust, such visions keep them standing. That night, you set the ticket on the table. The family gathers around, staring at it as if it were a loaf of bread. Your mother traces the edge with her finger. Your brother whispers the word America, as though it were a prayer. Your sister asks if the sea is wide, if the ships are strong. You have no answers, only the paper, the promise, the hope that one day soon you will step aboard and leave Dublin's famine streets behind. But even as you fold the ticket carefully, tucking it away, you feel its weight press heavy. It is not only passage, it is choice, sacrifice, the tearing away from soil and memory. The ship ticket carries not just escape, but exile. The morning begins with the sound of feet against stone, a slow rhythm that grows louder as the lane fills. You join the others, shawl pulled tight, shoulders hunched against the cold. The march begins not with speeches or banners, but with hunger, hundreds of hollow stomachs driving bodies forward. Men, women and children walk together, their steps heavy, their faces grey, their voices silent. The road stretches out ahead, slick with rain, lined with bare trees that seem to bow under the same weight as the marchers. You carry nothing but the ache in your bones and the hope that food might wait at the end. Some hold sticks for balance, others lean on each other, each step an effort, each mile a test. The sound of coughing punctuates the steady tramp of feet. The march leads toward the workhouse, toward the relief station where sacks of meal are rumored to be handed out. No one knows if it is true. Rumors rise and fall like the tide, but hunger gives them wings. You walk because to stay behind means to starve, and so you follow, mile after mile, driven by nothing but the chance of bread. Along the road, cottages lie abandoned, their roofs torn off, their doors hanging open. Fields stand empty, the soil dark with rot. The march passes them in silence, each ruin a reminder of why you walk. Children stumble, their legs too thin to carry them, and are lifted by parents whose own strength is failing. At times the line pauses, waiting for the weak to catch up, for no one dares to leave another behind. The overseers watch from horseback, their eyes scanning the crowd, their rifles slung at their sides. They do not join the march, they hover at its edges, keeping order, reminding all that even in hunger there are rules. Their presence is heavy, but hunger is heavier still. No one resists. The march presses on. By midday the sky grows darker, rain falling in cold sheets. Clothes cling to skin, feet slip in the mud, but the line does not break. You lower your head, watching the ground, focusing only on the next step. Around you, breaths grow ragged, but no one speaks. Words have no strength here, only the march itself carries meaning. When the workhouse comes into sight, the crowd surges forward, though the building looms more like a fortress than a refuge. High walls, barred gates, windows dark. The overseers bark orders, holding the line back, sorting bodies into those who may enter and those who must wait. The gates creak open slowly, and you step inside, your body trembling with exhaustion. Inside, there is no feast, no relief waiting in abundance, only another queue, another line, another wait for a ladle of thin meal. Yet you are here, inside the walls, alive after the march. Around you, others collapse onto the ground, too weak to stand, their breath shallow, their eyes closed. The hunger march has brought you to this place, not to freedom, not to fullness, but to another day endured. The road behind is long, the future uncertain, but for now the march has ended. Tomorrow, hunger will begin it again. You find it in the corner of a room that smells of damp wood and silence, a cradle, small and wooden, its sides worn smooth by years of gentle rocking. Once it must have been placed near the hearth, close to warmth, where mothers hummed lullabies and fathers bent low to smile at the new life inside. Now it stands crooked, half buried in shadow, its blankets gone, its boards collecting dust. The cradle is empty. The family who lived here has long since vanished. Perhaps they left for America, their passage bought with borrowed coin, the cradle too heavy to carry. Perhaps the fever came first, stealing the child, leaving the cradle as a coffin with no burial. Or perhaps hunger itself silenced the room until there was no one left to rock, no one left to sing. Whatever the truth, the cradle remains, a relic of what once was. You run your hand along the rim, the wood creaks under your touch, as if it remembers the weight it once bore. A faint groove runs along one side where tiny hands must have gripped, pulling against the world in first attempts at strength. The image rises in your mind so sharply that you almost hear it, the coo of a baby, the soft hum of a mother's voice, the gentle rhythm of wood rocking against stone. But the sound fades quickly, replaced again by silence. Outside the broken window, Dublin stirs with the same hollow rhythm as always, carts rattling, queues forming, the shuffle of worn boots. Yet here, in this room, time seems to have stopped. The cradle does not belong to the famine years. It belongs to a world before them, a world where life was expected to grow rather than wither. Its emptiness speaks more loudly than the cries that once filled it. You think of other rooms you have seen. Cradles abandoned, toys left behind, small shoes tucked in corners. Each one tells the same story without words. Families torn apart, children gone before they had a chance to walk the streets. Some to hunger, some to fever, some carried across the ocean in ships where too many never saw land again. The famine leaves scars not only on the living but on the things they leave behind. The cradle rocks slightly as the wind pushes through the window, the motion slow, unsteady, almost mournful. It is as though the house itself remembers and refuses to let go. You watch the empty movement and feel the weight of it settle in your chest. An abandoned cradle is more than wood and nails. It is the measure of lives that should have been. When you step away, the cradle remains in the corner, still rocking faintly, still whispering of what it has lost. You close the door behind you, but its image follows. Even in the crowded streets, even among the noise of hunger and grief, you see it again and again, the small space meant for new life, left empty in famine's shadow. In Dublin, there are many such cradles, too many, and each one carries the silence of a generation that never had the chance to grow. The pot sits on the hearth once more, but this time there are no potatoes to drop into its blackened mouth, no meat bones to simmer long into the night. Instead, a handful of grass, nettles and weeds gathered from the ditches outside the city lie floating on the surface, their green turning darker as the water boils. The room fills not with the rich smell of supper, but with a bitter, stinging scent that scratches the throat. You crouch close, watching the leaves swirl, their edges curling in the heat. The sound of bubbling should bring comfort, but tonight it carries only shame. This is not a meal, not truly, only desperation disguised as food. Your mother stirs with a wooden spoon, her face set, her eyes refusing to meet yours. She moves slowly, as though by stirring longer she might coax flavor from the weeds, or trick the pot into giving more than it holds. The children sit cross-legged on the floor, bowls clutched in their hands. They watch the pot with wide eyes, their breaths quick with hope. They do not yet know that hunger has changed the rules, that what waits for them is no gift but a mockery of one. Their lips part when the ladle rises, and for a moment you wish you could let them believe it is soup, believe it is enough. The first bowl is passed, steam rising faintly from its surface. The child drinks quickly, then coughs as the bitterness fills her mouth. Her eyes water, her face twists, but she swallows. She wipes her lips with the back of her hand, nodding faintly, though you can see the truth in her gaze. It is not food, it is survival, thin and cruel. You sip your own portion, the taste sharp, grassy, carrying the sting of nettle against the tongue. It scrapes down your throat, leaving behind not comfort, but a hollow ache. Yet you force it down, because the warmth is something, because the act of eating is something. The bitterness lingers long after the bowl is empty, coating your mouth, turning your stomach. Around the hearth, silence falls. The bowls are empty, but no one feels full. The children lie down, their bellies still aching, their eyes heavy with exhaustion. Your mother sets the pot aside, her hands trembling as she wipes the rim. She does not speak. She does not need to. The bitter brew has said enough. Outside, rain beats against the walls, dripping through the sackcloth roof. The city groans under the weight of famine, and in every alley, every tenement, families brew the same desperate concoctions: grass, roots, weeds boiled into water, bitterness swallowed in place of bread. Dublin's air carries the scent of hunger not only in silence and rot, but in this thin, sharp steam rising from countless pots. You lie awake with the taste still in your mouth, knowing tomorrow will bring the same. The bitter brew is no feast, no nourishment, yet it keeps you alive for another day. In famine, even suffering can be swallowed if it means survival. The church bell rings softly in the grey morning, its tone muffled by mist, yet still it draws people from their lanes and alleys. You join them, walking slowly toward the chapel, a low building with cracked walls and a roof patched against the rain. Hunger has thinned the crowd, but those who remain cling to the rituals that have always steadied their lives. In times when bread is scarce, prayer becomes its own sustenance. Inside, the air is cool and damp, heavy with the faint scent of wax and stone. Candles gutter on the altar, their flames small but steady. The pews are half filled with gaunt figures, shawls drawn tight, children slumped against their mothers. Faces are pale, lips chapped, eyes shadowed. Yet there is still reverence in the way they bow their heads, still hope in the way they fold their hands. The priest enters slowly, his robes worn thin at the sleeves, his steps heavy with fatigue. He has buried too many, whispered last rites in too many doorways, yet his eyes still carry warmth. He lifts his hand in blessing, and the congregation stirs, rising to their feet. His voice, when he begins, is low but steady, carrying over the silence like a thread of light through the gloom. He speaks of endurance, of suffering endured by saints, of hunger met with faith. His words are not promises of bread, nor assurances of relief. He cannot give what the people need most. But his blessing falls on them like a balm, reminding them they are not forgotten, that their pain is seen by heaven, even if ignored by earth. One by one, families step forward. The priest traces the sign of the cross on each forehead, his fingers trembling but firm. Mothers press children forward, their small faces lifted, eyes wide and solemn. Some children smile faintly at the touch, as though the gesture itself were food. Others remain still, too weary even for that. A woman kneels, clutching a bundle against her chest, a child wrapped in cloth, too quiet, too still. The priest bows his head, his lips moving in prayer, his voice breaking on the words. He blesses the child, though there is no life left to receive it. The woman rises with tears in her eyes, pressing the bundle close, walking slowly back to her seat. The congregation does not look away. They have all seen the same before, and they will see it again. When your turn comes, you kneel, the stone floor cold against your knees. The priest's hand rests on your head, his fingers light but steady. He whispers words of mercy, of strength, of hope beyond famine's reach. The blessing is simple, but it fills you with a warmth the bitter brew could never give. For a moment, you feel whole again, seen, remembered. When the service ends, the people file out slowly, their footsteps echoing on the worn floor. Outside, the hunger waits, the streets unchanged, the queues as long as ever. Yet each face carries a faint trace of peace, a sliver of strength to carry through another day. The priest's blessing cannot fill the pot or mend the roof, but in famine Dublin it becomes a lifeline, fragile but real, binding the living together in faith as they endure. The knock comes before the sun, heavy against the wooden door, loud enough to shatter the last fragments of sleep. You wake with a start, the air cold, the floor damp beneath your bare feet. Outside, the grey light of dawn barely lifts the shadows, but the sound is clear, boots on stone, the murmur of voices, the creak of wheels waiting in the lane. The landlord's men have come. Inside, the family stirs in panic. Your mother gathers the children close, pulling shawls around their shoulders. Your father moves toward the door, though his steps are slow, his shoulders heavy. He has argued with them before, pleaded for time, promised payment he could not make, but hunger has stripped his strength, and his words carry no weight. The men push inside, their coats dry against the morning mist, their faces hard. They do not shout, they do not need to. Behind them, others carry tools, crowbars, hammers, ropes. Their work is swift, practiced. One moves to the hearth, pulling loose the stones. Another climbs to the roof, prying away the thatch. Soon the house is no longer a shelter, but a ruin in the making. The children cry as the roof collapses, the thatch falling in clumps onto the floor. Smoke-stained beams groan, then split, opening the room to the pale sky above. Rain drips down at once, cold and merciless. Your mother covers her face, but she does not stop them. She knows resistance brings only blows. Neighbors gather outside, their faces lined with sorrow. Some whisper prayers, others shake their heads. They have seen this before, and they will see it again. Evictions have become as common as funerals, another ritual of famine. Each family waits its turn. Each door shudders at the sound of boots in the dawn. Your father tries one last time, reaching for the man with the crowbar. His voice breaks as he begs for mercy, for a day, for anything. The man pulls free, his face unmoved. The landlord's orders are clear. Clear the tenants, clear the cottages, clear the land. Payment is owed, and hunger is no excuse. Soon the walls begin to give way, stones pulled from their places, timber dragged into the lane. What was once a home is stripped bare, turned inside out. The family is herded into the yard, their few belongings scattered at their feet, a pot, a blanket, a single chair. The children cling to your mother's skirts, their eyes wide with terror. The men leave as quickly as they came, their boots echoing down the lane, their cart rattling away to the next cottage. The ruin remains, open to the sky, walls broken, roof gone. Smoke no longer rises from the hearth, only the wind moves through it now, carrying the sound of crying. As the sun rises higher, the family gathers what they can, stepping away from the wreckage that was once their home. Each step feels heavier than the last, for they carry not only their belongings but the weight of exile. The eviction dawn leaves nothing behind but rubble and silence. Another scar on Famine, Dublin, another family cast into the streets to wander. The lane is dark by nightfall, the lamps unlit, the streets hushed beneath the weight of hunger. Yet from one small window a flicker shines, faint but steady, a single candle burning against the gloom. You step closer, drawn by its glow, and see her there, the widow kneeling by a low table, the candle set before her like a sentinel. Its flame trembles each time the wind pushes through the cracks, but still it holds. Her room is nearly bare. The hearth is cold, its grate filled with ash that has not seen flame for weeks. A single chair sits broken in the corner, a shawl folded neatly across its arm. On the table beside the candle lies a rosary, the beads worn smooth by endless fingers. The walls are damp, patched with mold, but the candle makes them seem softer, glowing faintly as though trying to warm the stone. She whispers prayers into the silence, her voice low, steady, carrying both grief and strength. The names she speaks are gone, husband, children, kin, each one claimed by fever or famine. Yet she calls them as though they might still answer, her words reaching for souls beyond the reach of hunger. The candle burns for them, each flicker a memory, each spark a reminder that they once lived, once laughed, once shared bread by the fire. Outside, footsteps pass, slow and weary. Some pause at her window, drawn to the small light. For in a city darkened by despair, even a single candle becomes a beacon. Neighbors know her story. They know her losses. Some say she lights it for the dead, others that she lights it for the living, a symbol that not all hope has been smothered. Whatever the truth, the flame steadies those who see it. Her hands tremble as she shields the wick from the draught. The candle is short now, its wax pooling on the plate beneath. It has been burned before and will be burned again, each night until nothing remains. She saves the stub of each candle, piling them together as if their remnants might one day form another. Her faith is stitched together in the same way, fragments held tight against the storm. You watch her bow her head, the light outlining her face, hollowed by hunger yet calm. The shadows fall long across the room, the walls bending inward, as though the whole world shrinks to this single point of flame. The silence deepens, broken only by the faint hiss of melting wax and the murmur of prayer. When she rises, she crosses herself and stands for a moment in the doorway. The light of the candle spills into the lane, reaching farther than her walls. For an instant, it feels as though the darkness itself has thinned, as though the famine's grip loosens slightly in the face of such quiet defiance. The night wears on, and the candle burns lower, its flame bowing but unbroken. At last it gutters, fading into smoke, leaving only the faint smell of wax and the memory of light. Yet the widow will light another tomorrow, and another after that, until no candles remain. For in famine Dublin, one flame can hold more than warmth. It can hold the memory of love, the weight of prayer, and the stubborn will to endure. The bell above the door gives a hollow clang as you step inside, the sound sharp in the dim room. The pawnbroker's shop is narrow, its shelves sagging beneath the weight of other people's lives. Candlesticks dulled with tarnish, coats with seams split by years of wear, boots missing their laces, a stack of books whose pages smell of damp. Each item tells its own quiet story of surrender, traded for a few coins or a little bread. Behind the counter sits the pawnbroker, his shoulders hunched, his eyes sharp behind wire spectacles. He does not greet you, does not ask for names. He has seen too many faces come and go, each one the same mask of shame and desperation. What matters to him is the object you bring, and the value it will fetch. You place your offering on the counter, a small clock, once ticking proudly on the mantel, its hands frozen now, its brass tarnished by damp. The pawnbroker lifts it, turns it in his hands, taps it with a finger. He frowns, then shrugs, already calculating. He reaches for the ledger, a great leather-bound book swollen with ink and dust. Its pages are lined with thousands of entries, each one neat and precise, each one the story of something given up. He writes quickly, his quill scratching across the page. The sound is steady, relentless. He does not write names, only descriptions, numbers, dates. To him, you are not a person, but a line in his ledger, another transaction in a city drowning in them. The clock is no longer yours. It is only brass timepiece, worn 1 shilling. You take the coins he offers, their weight light in your hand. They feel colder than the clock ever did. You slip them into your pocket, already thinking of how they will vanish by nightfall into bread, perhaps, or into rent, into another day bought at the cost of memory. Around you, others wait with their own offerings. A woman clutches a silver locket, her fingers pressing it so tightly that it leaves marks on her skin. A man carries a bundle of tools, his livelihood reduced to metal scraps. A child stands silently beside her mother, holding out a pair of boots too small for her growing feet. Each approaches the counter in turn, each watches the pawnbroker weigh, measure, record. The ledger swells with their losses. The shop is silent save for the scratching of the quill and the occasional clink of coin. The air is heavy with the smell of dust and oil, of old cloth and tarnished metal. Sunlight struggles through the grimy windows, falling in weak lines across the piles of forgotten possessions. When you leave, the bell clangs again, and the sound follows you into the street. You carry coins now, but you feel lighter in a way that has nothing to do with weight. The clock is gone, its steady tick silenced forever. And somewhere in the pawnbroker's ledger, written in careful ink, lies the record of your loss. In famine Dublin, the ledger becomes more than paper and ink. It becomes the city's diary, each line a confession, each entry a wound. It is the record of hunger, written not in bread or blood but in the possessions of the poor, surrendered piece by piece until nothing remains. The morning mist clings to the river, curling in pale ribbons as you walk toward the quays. The air smells of salt and smoke, mixed with the faint odor of rot from barrels left too long in the damp. Ahead, the masts of ships rise like a forest of bare trees, their rigging creaking in the wind. Among them waits one vessel more feared than welcomed, the emigrant ship. Some call it Deliverance. Others call it the Ship of Tears. On the dock, families huddled together, bundles clutched close, eyes wide with both hope and dread. Mothers whisper to children, promising bread in America, land in Canada, streets filled with work and light. Fathers hold their tickets tightly, as though the thin slips of paper might dissolve if not guarded well. Each face carries the same shadow, the fear of leaving behind not only famine but the soil itself, the graves of kin, the language of their mothers. You step closer, hearing the sounds of departure, The groan of timbers as cargo is loaded, the shouted orders of sailors, the sobs of those who remain behind. For every family boarding, another stands on the quay to say farewell. Hands clutch through the air, fingers lingering until the last moment, when the sailors push them back, when the gangway pulls away. Tears fall freely, mixing with the salt spray, marking the wood darker where they land. The ship itself seems less like a vessel and more like a prison. Its decks are crowded, its hull dark with damp. The air that drifts from below stinks of sickness, of bodies pressed too close, of voyages already doomed. Stories travel faster than wind, of fever spreading in the dark, of children lost at sea, of ships arriving with half their passengers gone. Yet still they come, for even a chance of survival across the ocean feels stronger than the certainty of death at home. You watch a young woman lift her child onto the deck, kissing its hair before stepping back. She does not follow. Her ticket was sold to pay for the child's alone. The child cries out, reaching for her, but sailors pull it onward. The woman falls to her knees on the quay, her face hidden in her shawl. Around her, others wail, their cries rising above the gulls. It is a chorus Dublin has come to know, the sound of parting, sharp as any funeral keening. When the sails rise, white against the grey sky, the ship begins to move. The crowd on the quay surges forward, voices breaking as they call out names that will soon fade into the wind. Hands wave until the ship is no more than a shadow on the horizon. The cries linger long after it vanishes, carried back through the streets, echoing against stone and alley. You walk away with the sound in your ears, the sight in your eyes, a ship heavy with grief, carrying not only passengers, but the weight of all they leave behind. The ship of tears sails westward, its wake a trail of sorrow across the sea, while Dublin grows quieter, emptier, stripped of its people one voyage at a time. At dawn the fog lies thick over the city, muffling every sound. You walk past the churchyard, expecting the toll that marks the morning, the iron voice of the bell rolling out across the streets. But the air is empty, no ring, no echo, no measure of time. The bell is silent. Once, its sound carried through every lane, marking hours, calling worshippers, tolling for the dead. Children once counted its strikes, traders matched their bargains to its rhythm, mourners followed its solemn knell. Now it hangs high in the steeple, black with soot, its tongue still, its voice gone. The silence feels heavier than the sound ever did. You pause beneath the tower, staring up at its shadowed face. The ropes hang slack inside, unused, as though the very air has grown weary of ceremony. There are too many dead to count, too many funerals to mark. The bell ringer, worn thin by weeks of tolling, has ceased his labor. To toll for each passing would be to ring without rest, to strike the iron until it cracked. And so the bell is silent. Its silence the loudest sound in the famine city. Inside the church, candles gutter weakly, their wax pooling on the stone. The pews are half empty, though the parish is full of grief. Some are too weak to walk, others too broken to pray. A priest kneels at the altar, his head bowed, his lips moving, but his voice carries little. Without the bell, even his prayers seem small, as though heaven itself has drawn farther away. Outside, neighbors whisper of the silence. An old woman mutters that it is ill luck, that without the bell the city drifts without measure, without blessing. A man shakes his head, saying it is mercy no one can bear to hear its endless tolling, no one can carry the weight of its voice. Children ask why it no longer rings, and no parent answers. To explain would be to name the truth. There are too many deaths for iron to mourn. You walk on, but the absence follows you. The lanes feel emptier, the sky lower, as though the silence of the bell seeps into every doorway. At a corner you meet a funeral procession, a small group carrying a coffin made of rough pine. No bell tolls ahead of them, no sound marks their passage. They move quietly, their footsteps the only rhythm. The coffin is lowered into the ground without ceremony, without knell. The earth closes over it in silence. That night, the wind carries faint sounds from the city, the rattle of carts, the distant cry of a child. But the bell does not speak. It waits, suspended in shadow, its iron mouth closed. You lie awake listening for it, hoping for even one strike to break the night. None comes. The silent bell becomes more than absence. It is a symbol of the famine itself, a voice stilled by too much sorrow, a city that no longer counts its dead. In its quiet, Dublin hears the truth that grief has grown beyond the power of iron, beyond the reach of sound, and only silence remains to mark the loss. It begins with a murmur in the market square, a sound low and restless, the shuffle of bodies pressed too close together. You stand among them, bowl tucked beneath your arm, the hunger in your belly louder than the voices around you. The stalls that once spilled over with loaves and rolls now hold only a few, their crusts pale and dry, their prices scrawled high in chalk. Bread, once common, now sits like treasure behind wooden boards. The crowd grows heavier as more arrive, eyes fixed on the loaves, mouths tight with silence. Mothers clutch children to their skirts, men clench their fists at their sides. Coins clink in pockets, but too few to buy what is offered. The baker stands stiff behind his stall, his face pale, his eyes darting between the people and the soldiers waiting at the corner. He knows what they know. There will never be enough. The murmur sharpens when a woman steps forward, her hand trembling as she lays her coins down. The baker counts slowly, then shakes his head. Too little. She begs, her voice cracking, pointing to the child on her hip. Still he refuses. The crowd surges forward, their voices rising, shouts spilling into the air. Hunger, silent for so long, finds its voice. The first hand reaches over the stall, snatching a loaf, then another, then three more. The baker shouts, grabbing at wrists, but he is pushed back, his stall tipping as loaves tumble to the ground. People dive for them, clutching at crusts, stuffing pieces into shawls, into mouths, into the hands of children. The square erupts in chaos, the sound of hunger turned to fury. You find yourself swept forward, pressed against the boards, your hand closing around half a loaf before it hits the ground. The bread is hard, rough, but its weight in your palm feels like salvation. Around you, the riot swells. Shouts clash with screams, soldiers push through the crowd, batons raised. The crack of wood against flesh cuts through the air, sharp and merciless. Men fall, women cry out, children scatter. Yet the riot does not stop. Hunger has made the people fearless, desperate. They clutch their loaves, even as blows fall on their backs. Some hurl stones, others fists, their rage rising like fire through dry straw. The soldiers strike harder, their shouts swallowed by the roar of the crowd. You stumble away, clutching your bread to your chest. The crust scrapes your skin, crumbs falling as you run through the alley. Behind you, the square still churns with noise, shouts, cracks, the cries of the wounded. Smoke rises where a stall is set aflame, its wood snapping, sparks drifting upward. The smell of char and crust mingles in the air, bitter and sweet at once. When you reach home, you set the half-loaf on the table. Your family gathers close, their eyes wide, their hands trembling as they touch it. You break it apart, piece by piece, dividing it carefully. The riot has left bruises on your arms, the echo of screams in your ears, but here, for this moment, there is bread. Outside, the square lies scarred, its silence heavy with the memory of fury. The bread riot has passed, but its echo lingers in every empty stomach, in every whisper that tomorrow it may rise again. The lane is quiet as you turn the corner, too quiet for mourning. No children's feet scuff the stones, no voices drift from open doors. Then you see it, a strip of cloth hanging limp from the upper window of a tenement, black against the grey sky. It flutters faintly in the wind, its edges frayed, its colour dark and final. The black flag. Everyone knows what it means. The fever has come to that house. Step too close and risk carrying it back to your own. Mothers cross themselves, men turn away, children are pulled sharply from the threshold. The lane parts around it as water parts around a stone. Neighbours passing quickly with eyes averted, though their ears still strain for the sounds within. You pause, watching the doorway. No one enters, no one leaves. The windows are shuttered, though faint moans seep through the cracks. The smell follows the sour reek of sickness, of bodies burning with fever, of straw fouled by sweat. It drifts into the street, mingling with the mist, clinging to clothes and hair. You press your sleeve to your mouth, but it does little. Inside, you know the air is thick, the beds crowded, the sick and the dying laid side by side. Families who once huddled for warmth now lie scattered in silence, their breaths ragged, their eyes glazed. Some whisper prayers, others call for water, others say nothing at all. The black flag above them is both warning and confession. This house is no longer a home, but a ward of death. At midday, a cart comes. Its wheels grind against the cobblestones, its horse stamping nervously as if it knows the weight it will carry. Two men climb down, scarves tied around their mouths, their hands wrapped in cloth. They do not knock. They enter quickly, emerging minutes later with their burden wrapped in sheets. The neighbors watch from doorways, their eyes wide, their hands gripping shawls. No one speaks. The cart fills, the sheets stacked one upon another, and still the black flag waves above. Children whisper of curses, saying the flag calls to death, that once it flies, no one inside can escape. Mothers hush them, though their own eyes linger on the dark cloth with fear. Some houses hang their own flags when sickness comes, hoping to spare neighbors to confess their sorrow before the cart arrives. Others hide it, ashamed, until the smell or the silence betrays them. By evening, the lane grows emptier still. Few dare to pass beneath the flag, fewer still to linger. Yet it remains hanging in the wind, a shadow over the house and over the city itself. The famine kills with hunger, but the fever spreads faster, and the black flags multiply. You turn away, but even as you walk, the image follows the cloth stirring softly, the windows shuttered, the silence pressing. In every corner of Dublin, the black flags rise like warnings, like graves stitched to the walls of the living. They mark not only death, but the dread of waiting for it to arrive. The queue begins before dawn, when the streets are still silver with mist and the lamps burn low. You take your place among the others, bowl in hand, shawl drawn tight, your breath rising in pale clouds. The line stretches down the lane, curving around corners, growing longer with each passing minute. Behind you, footsteps keep arriving, fathers with weary eyes, mothers cradling children, the old leaning on sticks. Hunger has made them rise early, for the soup kitchen is the only promise left. The air is heavy with silence. Now and then a cough cuts through, or a child whimpers, but mostly there is only the sound of feet shuffling forward, slow as the hours themselves. You stare at the back of the figure ahead, shoulders bowed, coat patched with more holes than cloth. Each step he takes, you follow. The rhythm becomes your own heartbeat. As the sun rises, the smell drifts from the kitchen door. Thin, watery broth with a trace of cabbage, maybe a hint of barley. It is not rich, not enough, but the scent alone makes mouths water, stomachs twist, eyes close in longing. The queue stirs faintly, a ripple of hope moving through it. Children lift their heads, their faces hollow but alert. Mothers whisper promises, though their own voices tremble with doubt. The doors remain shut for hours, the crowd pressed tight against itself. Some lean against the walls, too weak to stand. Others sit on the stones, clutching bowls to their chests as if afraid they will vanish. Conversations are few, but glances are many. Every face tells the same story: nights without bread, cupboards bare, pots cold. Finally, the doors creak open. A man in a dark coat steps out, shouting for order. The line lurches forward, bodies pressing closer, bowls lifted high. Inside, the air is warmer, filled with steam and the clatter of ladles against pots. Volunteers move quickly, their hands trembling from fatigue, their faces pale but resolute. When your turn comes, you step forward, holding out your bowl. The ladle dips into the pot, rising again with a thin stream of broth. It splashes into your bowl, filling it halfway, steam rising faintly in the air. You nod, whisper thanks, though your voice catches. Behind you, others press forward, their voices louder, desperate not to be turned away before the pots run dry. You sip carefully, the liquid burning your tongue. The taste is sharp, bitter with weeds and overboiled cabbage, yet it warms your chest, trickles down into the emptiness inside. You drink slowly, stretching it, though the hunger inside begs you to swallow it all at once. Around you, others do the same, heads bowed, spoons scraping, no one speaking. The sound of eating is the only song in the room. When the bowl is empty, you lick its rim, chasing the last drops. Already the hunger stirs again, but for this moment, you have tasted something hot, something alive. Outside, the queue still waits, longer than before, stretching into the mist. The soup kitchen cannot feed them all, but still they come, bowls in hand, waiting in hope. In Famine Dublin, the queue is more than a line, it is the shape of survival itself. You set out before sunrise, when the streets are still cloaked in grey and the air carries the bite of night. There is no food at home, no coin left in your pocket. The only choice is to walk. And so you do, one foot after another, though each step feels heavier than the last. The streets of Dublin stretch ahead, long and uneven, their cobblestones slick with mist. Others walk beside you, some alone, some in small clusters, all moving with the same weary rhythm. They clutch shawls tighter, lean on sticks, carry bowls in bags. No one speaks. Hunger has stripped words away, leaving only the sound of boots against stone, the slow march of bodies bound by need. The walk takes you past shuttered shops and empty markets, past houses marked by black flags, past alleys where children crouch with hollow eyes. Every doorway seems to tell the same story: silence, loss, waiting. The air itself feels thinner, as though even breath costs too much. You walk because rumour says a cart of bread may arrive at the parish. You walk because someone whispered of a pot of meal boiled at the workhouse gate. You walk because staying still means starving, and movement at least holds the promise of chance. Hunger drives your feet even as your body pleads for rest. Around you, the walk becomes a procession. A man stumbles, his knees buckling, but others lift him, holding him upright until his legs move again. A mother carries her child against her chest, though her arms shake, her face pale with exhaustion. An old woman pauses to lean against a wall, her hand pressed to her chest, but after a moment she continues, her pace slow but steady. No one turns back. The city watches as you pass. Horses pulling carts snort and stamp, their loads of grain bound for the docks. Guards stand at corners, their eyes hard, their rifles gleaming in the mist. They do not stop you, but they do not offer help either. To them, the hunger walk is just another feature of the famine, another river of shadows flowing through the streets. By midday, your legs feel hollow, your feet numb. The line of walkers stretches far behind, far ahead, each figure bent forward, driven only by the same gnawing ache. You try to count the steps, but numbers blur. The only rhythm left is the beat of your heart and the scrape of your soles against stone. At last you reach the square, where the rumour proves half true. A pot steams in the open air, its contents ladled out to those who wait. The queue is long, the pot small. Some will eat, others will not. Still, you take your place, because the hunger walk has brought you this far, and to turn back empty would be unbearable. When the ladle finally tips into your bowl, the broth is thin, the portion meagre, yet you sip it slowly, letting the warmth spread through your chest. Around you, others do the same, their eyes closed, their faces eased for the first time all day. The hunger walk ends here, but only for a night. Tomorrow, the city will rise again, and the feet will begin their march once more, carrying bodies through mist and silence, step after weary step, chasing the faint promise of survival. You see it long before you reach it, the high stone walls, grey against the pale sky, and the gate of iron bars that guards the entrance. The workhouse looms at the edge of the city like a fortress, its windows dark, its chimneys smokeless, its reputation heavier than the stones themselves. Those who walk toward it do so slowly, as if each step were a surrender. The line forms outside the gate, a river of hollow faces and bent shoulders. Families huddle close, their bundles tied with rope, the sum of their lives carried in cloth sacks. Children cling to skirts, their eyes wide, their lips cracked from hunger. No one speaks. The silence is thicker here than in any soup queue, for all know what the gate demands. To enter is to live under its roof. To enter is also to break apart. The gatekeeper stands with his ledger, his pen scratching names, his voice flat. One family at a time steps forward. The rules are clear: husbands to one wing, wives to another, children separated by age and sex. The workhouse offers survival, but at a cost deeper than hunger, the tearing of kin from kin. You watch as a mother bends low to kiss her child, her lips pressed fiercely against the boy's forehead. She clings to him until the guards pull her away, her cries rising in the still air. The boy is led through a smaller door, his face pale with shock, his small hands reaching for arms that no longer hold him. The gate clangs shut behind him, heavy as a tomb. Another man removes his cap, his eyes fixed on the ground as he steps inside alone. His wife lingers outside, clutching the baby she cannot keep within. The infant will go to a separate ward, if it survives at all. She rocks it quickly, whispering prayers, before the clerk's hand pulls at her shoulder, ushering her into the women's wing. The gate closes again, swallowing her. When your turn comes, your body trembles, though the hunger inside urges you forward. You give your name, watch it scratched into the ledger, and step through. The clang of the gate behind you feels final, a sentence passed. Inside, the yard is bare stone, cold wind cutting through it, the walls pressing close. A guard directs you away from your family, his voice brisk, his hand pointing firmly. You hesitate, but his eyes are hard, and his stick taps sharply against the stones. Your family is led in another direction. Their footsteps fade quickly, and soon you are surrounded only by strangers, thin, pale, silent figures, already swallowed by the house. The workhouse gate remains behind you, tall and unyielding. For those outside, it marks the choice between hunger and surrender. For those inside, it is a reminder of what has been lost. Families torn apart, freedom exchanged for survival, dignity stripped away. In Famine Dublin, the workhouse gate is not just iron and stone. It is the line between the world of the desperate and the world of the broken, a threshold that once crossed can never truly be left behind. The first frost settles over the city like a shroud, whitening the cobblestones, stiffening the air so that each breath feels sharp in the throat. You wake to find the window rimmed with ice, the cloth stuffed in its cracks stiff with cold. The room is darker than usual, the fire long dead, the blankets damp and thin. Winter has arrived, and with it comes a new cruelty to layer over the hunger. You rise slowly, your body stiff, your fingers numb before they even leave the blanket. The floor is colder than stone, as if it has swallowed the night's frost whole. The pot in the corner holds only frozen water, its surface glazed, cracked where your mother tried to break it with a spoon. The air smells faintly of smoke from a distant chimney, but no warmth drifts here. Outside, the streets crunch beneath boots, though few dare to walk. Those who do keep their arms folded tight, their heads bent low, their shawls wrapped high. Breath plumes white in the air, curling away as quickly as it comes. Children huddle in doorways, their lips blue, their hands hidden deep in rags. Some sit still, conserving what little heat they have left, their eyes dull and glassy. You pass a man splitting wood, each strike echoing like thunder. Chips fly, steam rising from his breath as he works. The logs stacked behind him are high, rich with the smell of pine. But they are not for you. They are bound for the houses of the wealthy, where fires roar all night, where windows glow with golden light. For the poor, the only wood left lies as scraps, broken crates, stolen fence posts, fragments pried from ruins. By midday, the frost has not lifted. The river itself moves sluggishly, ice forming along its banks. Horses stumble, their breath hissing in clouds. The market is emptier than before. Even the traders hesitate to linger. What little is sold freezes in place, bread hard as stone, vegetables stiff and brittle. Hunger was cruel, but hunger joined by cold becomes unbearable. You return home as the sun sinks low, the shadows long and sharp. Inside, your family huddles close, wrapped in whatever rags remain. Your sister coughs, each breath rattling, her lips tinged with purple. Your mother rubs her hands together until the skin cracks, then pulls the children close, using her own body as a shield. The cold seeps in regardless, through roof, wall, and floor, until it feels as if the whole city has turned to ice. That night, you lie awake listening to the wind scrape against the walls. It moans through the cracks, a thin and endless sound. The blanket over you is stiff, your breath rising in small clouds that drift toward the ceiling before vanishing. Your stomach growls, but hunger is no longer the sharpest pain. The cold presses deeper, settling into bone, into marrow, into the very center of you. The winter chill does not roar or strike. It waits, it seeps, it endures. In famine Dublin, it kills as surely as hunger, quietly and without witness, one breath at a time. It comes in the early light, when the mist still hangs low and the streets are quiet. You hear it first, the creak of wooden wheels, slow and strained, rolling over cobblestones slick with frost. The sound is heavy, dragging, as if the very weight of grief pulls it forward. Then it appears, turning the corner, the horse gaunt and trembling, the driver hunched in his seat. Behind him rattles the dead wagon. Its bed is plain wood, stained dark, its sides worn smooth by countless burdens. Upon it lie shapes shrouded in sheets, some small, some large, stacked one against another with no space for ceremony. The cloth clings to them, damp from the night air, their outlines too clear to mistake. A hand slips free from one, grey and stiff, fingers curled as though still reaching. The driver does not stop to cover it. His eyes stay fixed ahead, his scarf pulled tight against his face. Doors open quietly as the wagon passes. Families step into the lane, their shawls pulled close, their faces hollow. Some carry burdens wrapped in cloth, lifted with trembling arms. They approach the wagon without words, their movements slow, reverent. A woman kisses the forehead of a child one last time before placing the small body onto the pile. Her lips linger, her tears falling into the sheet, but the driver's hand is already reaching to pull it aboard. The wagon must keep moving. Neighbors watch from doorways, their eyes wide but their voices silent. The sight has grown too common for cries, too heavy for wails. Grief has become a private thing now, carried inward like hunger. The wagon is its own ritual, a procession through the streets that requires no priest, no bell. Its creaking wheels are enough. Children watch too, their faces pale, their eyes unblinking. They clutch at skirts and coats, some hiding behind legs, others staring openly. For them, the dead wagon is both terror and inevitability. They know it may one day stop at their own door. The smell follows the cart, sharp and sour, a mixture of sweat, sickness, and the damp of unwashed cloth. It lingers long after the wagon passes, seeping into walls, into hair, into breath. You taste it, even when you try not to. At the edge of the city, the wagon turns toward the burial ground. There, the bodies are slid down into pits, one after another, without marker or name. The earth swallows them quickly, shovels striking in steady rhythm, the sound of soil hitting sheets. The driver waits with bowed head until the bed is empty. Then he climbs back into his seat, flicks the reins, and the wagon groans forward again, ready for another round. You stand long after it has gone, the silence pressing harder than the sound itself. The dead wagon is more than a cart. It is the famine given shape, rolling through Dublin's veins, gathering its toll. Each creak of its wheels reminds you that hunger does not wait, that sorrow has no rest. In famine Dublin, the dead wagon moves without end, and the city moves with it, step by step, shadow by shadow. It begins not with shouts in the street, but with voices lowered in the corners of taverns, in back rooms where shutters are drawn tight against the night. The famine has carved silence into Dublin, yet beneath that silence another sound stirs a murmur, thin but steady. It is the whisper of rebellion. You hear it first as you pass a group of men gathered near the quay, their faces gaunt, their coats patched. They speak in tones too low to carry, but their eyes are sharp, alive with something more than hunger. Words slip through the cold air like sparks. Grain, landlords, freedom. The phrases vanish as quickly as they rise, replaced by silence when footsteps approach. Yet the silence itself feels charged, as though it hides more than it reveals. Inside the city's dim pubs, where once songs rang loud and mugs clinked, men now lean close across bare tables. Their whispers mix with the smell of stale ale and damp wood. They speak of carts laden with grain leaving for the ports, guarded by soldiers while families starve in the alleys. They speak of rights, of justice, of a future where hunger is not the measure of a man's worth. Some talk of America, others of uprising here. All lower their voices when the door creaks open. The whispers spread further than taverns. They travel in the queues, passed from lip to lip as families wait for broth. They slip into the workyards, murmured between the strikes of hammers against stone. Even in the fever wards, the sick mutter them through cracked lips, their words carried by visitors to other streets. Hunger may bend backs, but it sharpens tongues. At night, in the cramped rooms of the tenements, families huddle together, and the talk continues. Fathers speak of past rebellions, of men who once rose with pikes and paid the price. Mothers hush children, fearful that such words might bring soldiers to the door. Yet even they cannot help listening, their own hearts stirred by the thought that silence cannot last forever. The authorities hear the whispers too. Soldiers patrol more heavily, their boots loud against the cobbles, their rifles gleaming in the grey light. The presence is meant to intimidate, to scatter the sparks before they burn. Yet hunger breeds boldness. When a soldier's back is turned, a muttered curse follows him. When grain carts roll past, more eyes linger, more hands tighten into fists. You walk the streets and feel it, this undercurrent of defiance, fragile but real. The famine has stripped bodies thin, but it has also laid bare the cruelty of a system that lets food leave the city while bellies ache. People begin to see not only their hunger but its cause. The whispers grow louder, if only by a breath. No banners fly, no marches thunder yet. But the whisper of rebellion is there in the alleys, in the taverns, in the very silence of the streets. It moves like a draught beneath doors, like smoke slipping through cracks, impossible to catch, impossible to silence completely. And though no one dares speak it aloud, everyone feels the same question rising: how long can a city starve before whispers turn to cries? The chapel is dim, its candles burned low, their wax running thin across cracked stone. You kneel among others, the wood of the pew pressing hard against your bones, your shawl drawn close to guard against the cold that drifts through the open door. The priest's voice rises at the altar, steady but weary, each word of scripture carrying the weight of too many funerals. His voice echoes faintly, swallowed by the silence that clings to the congregation. Your lips move with the familiar words, but the sound falters. Once you prayed with strength, with certainty, the rhythm of the prayers rolling like breath itself. Now the words catch in your throat, broken by the sharp pang of hunger that claws at your belly. Beside you, a child coughs, the sound rattling through the still air, and her mother's whispered prayer collapses into sobs. The chant dies as others stumble, voices thinning, until only the priest's tones remain, small against the emptiness. You bow your head, forcing the words again, but they come jagged, uneven. Give us this day our daily bread. The phrase cuts like a blade, the hunger too sharp, the promise too far. You whisper it once, twice, then stop, for it feels hollow in your mouth. Around you, others fall silent as well, their hands still clasped but their voices gone. The prayer lies broken in the air, unfinished, fragile. The priest pauses, his gaze sweeping across the pews. He sees the silence, the tears, the faces bowed, not in devotion but in despair. He continues anyway, his own voice cracking, his own faith bruised. "Deliver us from evil." The words tremble, almost begging. The echo fades quickly, leaving only the sound of the wind scraping against the door. You glance at the crucifix, its wood darkened by candle smoke. The figure of Christ hangs with bowed head, the crown of thorns carved deep. His body is thin, ribs showing, the image too close to what you see in the streets each day. The suffering feels less like a symbol and more like a mirror. You wonder if those carved eyes see you, if the silence that meets your broken prayer is mercy or abandonment. The congregation shifts uneasily, some rising to leave before the blessing is spoken. Their steps echo, boots dragging, shawls brushing the stone. No one scolds them, no one asks them to stay. In famine Dublin, prayers do not fill the pot, and faith itself bends under the weight of hunger. When the service ends, you step into the cold. The air outside is grey, the streets lined with queues, children sitting in doorways, women clutching bundles. The prayer still stirs on your lips, but the words no longer hold. They are fragments, broken syllables scattered by the wind. Yet even in silence, you feel something linger. Not hope, not fully, but the memory of it. Perhaps tomorrow the words will come again. Perhaps tomorrow voices will rise together once more. But tonight, in famine's shadow, the prayer lies broken like everything else. The tenement looms over the narrow lane, its windows dark, its walls streaked with damp that never dries. Inside, the stairwell smells of rot and smoke, of too many bodies pressed into too little space. You climb slowly, each step creaking, your hand brushing the cold stone wall for balance. At the top, the air is heavy with silence broken only by coughing, the rasp of breath struggling to hold on. You enter the room, and the stillness deepens. A man lies on a straw pallet near the window, his body little more than bone wrapped in cloth. His chest rises and falls in shallow waves, each one slower than the last. Around him gather his family, their faces pale, their eyes fixed on him with a sorrow too heavy for tears. A candle burns on the table, its flame flickering weakly in the draught from the broken window. The man's breath rattles, a thin whistle that echoes against the walls. Once he was strong, his hands calloused from work on the docks, his voice booming in song after long days. Now his fingers tremble against the blanket, his lips cracked, his voice reduced to nothing. The room holds its breath with him, every pause between his gasps, sharp enough to break the silence. His wife kneels close, her hand on his chest, as if to will it to rise again. She whispers words only he can hear, promises of peace, prayers for mercy. Her voice falters, catching in her throat, but she does not stop. The children huddle together in the corner, their shawls drawn tight, their eyes wide and shining. They do not move closer, but they do not look away. Outside, the city stirs as always, carts rattling, boots striking stone, gulls crying from the river. But none of it reaches here. In this room, in this narrow slice of tenement row, time has slowed to the rhythm of one man's chest. Every gasp feels like the last, until another follows, weaker than before. Neighbors gather in the hall, their murmurs soft, their faces grim. They know the sound well. It is not the first time, nor will it be the last. In tenement row, death visits daily, slipping from one door to the next, leaving silence behind. The neighbors do not intrude, but they wait, ready to carry word to the priest, ready to fetch the cart when the time comes. The candle flickers once, twice, then steadies. The man exhales, long and thin, his chest sinking but not rising again. The room holds still. The wife leans closer, her lips trembling, her hand pressing to his chest. She waits, counting heartbeats that never come. At last, she bows her head, her shoulders shaking, her whisper falling into silence. The children cry softly now, their sobs muffled against one another. The neighbors step inside, their voices hushed, their hands gentle. The candle continues to burn, the only light in the room, its flame steady as if to honor what has passed. The last breath has come and gone in Tenement Row. Outside, the city continues, blind to one more loss. But within these walls, grief hangs heavy, joining the countless sorrows already etched into the stones. In Famine Dublin, death is no stranger. It walks the rows, room by room, until every household has felt its touch. At dawn, the quay is already alive with the groan of ropes and the scrape of barrels rolled across the stones. You walk with the others toward the river, drawn not by hope, but by the heavy sound of food being moved. Ahead of you, a ship towers at the dock, its masts stark against the pale sky, its deck bristling with sailors shouting orders. The smell of grain drifts faintly through the mist, warm and sweet, sharp against the hunger gnawing your belly. On the quay, carts line up in rows, their wooden wheels sinking into the damp earth. Men load them steadily, their arms straining as they heave sacks of grain onto their backs. Each sack bulges heavy, the fabric stretched tight, the kernels inside shifting with a sound like dry rain. The weight is enough to break a man's spine, yet they move quickly, driven not by urgency of feeding the city, but by the orders to send the grain away. You stand among the onlookers, families gathered in silence, their eyes fixed on the ship. Mothers hold children close, their noses lifted to catch the faint scent. Fathers press their lips together, fists tight at their sides. Children point, whispering that food is there, food enough to fill every pot, to end the hunger, but no one moves. The soldiers are stationed at the edge of the quay, their rifles glinting in the cold light, their bayonets sharp as warning. The first cart rolls up the gangway, the sacks carried below deck. More follow, a steady rhythm, the ship swallowing each load into its dark belly. The people shift uneasily, murmurs passing through the crowd. Some mutter prayers, others curses. The injustice hangs in the air, the grain grown on Irish soil, harvested from Irish hands, bound not for empty mouths here but for markets abroad. Bread will be baked in another country while Dublin starves. You see a boy slip from his mother's grasp, darting forward to snatch at a loose handful of grain spilled on the stones. A soldier steps forward at once, his boot striking the boy back, the kernels scattering into the mud. The mother pulls her son close, her voice shaking as she whispers comfort, though her eyes burn with fury. The crowd stiffens, but no one dares step forward. Hunger has made them bold in whispers, but fear keeps their feet rooted. The ship's hold fills slowly, the air thick with the dust of grain. The sweet smell grows stronger, so strong it makes your mouth water, your stomach twist painfully. You press your sleeve to your lips, trying to swallow the ache. Around you, others do the same. Some cry silently, their tears mixing with the mist. By midday, the gangway is pulled back, the ropes untied, the sails rise, catching the weak wind, and the ship begins to drift from the dock. The people remain, watching in silence as it slides into the river, its hold full, its deck steady. The grain ship moves eastward, carrying with it what could have been life, leaving behind only hunger. You stand until it vanishes into the grey horizon, your hands clenched, your throat tight. The grain ship is more than a vessel. It is a wound cut deep into Dublin's heart, proof that survival is not a matter of what exists, but of who controls it. And the city, left behind, has nothing but empty pots and the bitter taste of injustice. The morning mist lies heavy on the quay, softening the edges of the river and blurring the outlines of the ships that wait with sails furled. You walk with the others toward the water, the sound of wheels grinding against cobblestones echoing in the grey light. Ahead, the emigrant ship looms, its timbers dark with damp, its deck crowded with sailors shouting orders. Around it gathers a crowd, not of merchants but of families, faces pale, shawls pulled tight, bundles clutched close. Today is a day of parting. You see them everywhere along the quay. mothers pressing coins into their sons' palms, fathers kneeling to whisper last words into their daughters' ears. Some carry bundles tied with rope, others only the clothes on their backs. Their eyes are wide with fear and hope, for the ship before them is not only wood and sail but the narrow bridge between death and survival. Across the ocean, they say, bread is plentiful and land waits to be tilled. Here there is only famine. At the foot of the gangway, the goodbyes begin. A young man embraces his mother, her shawl wet with tears, her lips trembling against his cheek. She holds him as though her arms could anchor him to the quay, but the sailor calls again, and she lets go. Her cry follows him up the planks, breaking into the morning air. He does not look back, for his own eyes are full. Nearby, a father lifts his child high, kissing her hair before placing her into the arms of relatives who will remain. He cannot afford passage for them all. The child reaches for him, her small hands clinging, but he turns quickly, his shoulders stiff. His wife buries her face in her shawl, unable to watch as he walks away. The crowd shifts around them, every family bound by the same grief. The quay is filled with sound, the gulls crying overhead, the sailors' shouts, the sobs of those left behind. Some wail openly, their voices sharp as keening at a funeral. Others remain silent, their faces stone, their grief buried deep. Hands grasp at hands, fingers clutching until the very last moment, until the sailors press them apart. The gangway creaks beneath the weight of those boarding, the ship swallowing them into its dark hold. Children cling to their mothers, asking if those leaving will return. The mothers whisper softly, though their words carry no promise. Few who sail will come back. The sea swallows not only distance but years, and across the ocean another life waits, one that rarely allows for return. The emigrant's goodbye is rarely a farewell of days or months, it is a farewell of lifetimes. When the sails finally rise, the ship pulls from the dock, drifting into the mist. Those on board press to the rail, waving until the faces on the quay blur and vanish. Those left behind stand in silence, their tears mixing with the river air, their hands still outstretched though the ship is gone. You turn away at last, your chest heavy, your throat tight. The emigrant's goodbye lingers, not in words but in the silence that follows, in the empty space left on the quay, in the hollow ache of parting without return. In Famine Dublin, the goodbye is not only for a person, it is for a piece of the city itself, carried away on every departing tide. At first light, you step into the lane and hear nothing. No traders' calls from the market, no laughter spilling from tavern doors, no clatter of carts bouncing against the stones. The city that once roared with noise now lies muted, its streets wrapped in silence so deep it seems unnatural. Even the gulls circling over the river cry less often, as though they, too, feel the weight of famine pressing over Dublin. The cobblestones glisten with frost, but no horses' hooves strike them, no wheels grind along their grooves. The markets are bare, stalls shuttered, the wooden boards damp with morning dew. Once, this street rang with bargaining voices, with music from fiddlers, with the clink of coins changing hands. Now it carries only the shuffle of a lone figure hurrying past, eyes lowered, footsteps echoing loudly in the still air. Tenements stand close together, their windows dark, their doors closed. Inside, families linger in silence of their own, conserving energy, conserving breath. The walls are too thin to block the sound of coughs or sobs, but even those grow fainter each day. You pass by one doorway where a woman once sold bread from a basket. The door is bolted now, the threshold swept clean, as though she had never been there at all. Children should fill the streets, running, chasing, shouting, their games ringing like bells through the alleys. Instead, you see only one boy crouched in a corner, tracing lines in the frost with his finger. His lips are blue, his eyes distant. He does not look up as you pass, and you do not disturb him. The silence has swallowed even childhood. In the distance, a bell should toll, but the tower remains mute. The silence of the bells spreads across the city like frost, leaving no corner untouched. Each passing day without its sound deepens the stillness, as though even the church has bowed to the famine. Without the bell, time itself feels broken, the hours blending together until only hunger marks their passage. Now and then you catch the faintest sounds, boots of a soldier patrolling, the cough of a neighbor, the distant cry of a child that fades quickly. But these are fragments, swallowed almost immediately by the larger hush. The silence is not peaceful. It is heavy, waiting, watchful. It is the kind that clings to the walls of a sick room, where everyone listens for the final breath. By midday, you reach the river. The water moves sluggishly, its banks lined with empty carts. A grain ship has already departed, leaving the quay bare, its silence sharper than the sailors' shouts that once filled it. Families who came too late stand scattered along the dock, their mouths closed, their faces pale, their grief too deep for words. When night falls, the silence thickens. The wind moves through the alleys, rattling doors and loose shutters, but it does not break the hush. Fires burn low, voices murmur only in whispers, as though to speak aloud would summon something darker. You lie down with the stillness pressing against your chest, your ears straining for sound. The streets in silence hold a truth as cruel as hunger, that famine does not only empty stomachs, but empties the city of its very voice. In the hush, Dublin feels less alive, as though the silence itself is preparing to close the last page of its story. Even as the famine years pass, their weight lingers, stretched long across the city like the shadow of a storm that never fully clears. You walk the streets in the grey of evening, the lamps flickering weakly against the mist, and though the cries of hunger have quieted, the silence they left behind has not lifted. Dublin moves, but it moves differently now, slower, wearier, marked by memories that cling like soot to stone. The tenements still stand, though many windows are shuttered, their doorways dark. Behind them live fewer families than before. Some left for the ships, vanishing into the Atlantic with only faint promises of letters. Others lie beneath the soil, their names unmarked. The city feels thinned, its veins drained. Every lane carries the ghost of voices that once filled it, echoes of queues that wound endlessly for soup or bread. Even where children play again, their laughter rings softer, as if still tempered by the famine's hush. You pass a churchyard, its ground uneven with too many graves dug too quickly. Grass has begun to grow again, faint and sparse, but beneath it the earth remembers. The bell tolls once more from the steeple, yet its voice carries differently, slower, heavier, as though it knows the silence it once failed to cover. Each strike feels like both mourning and survival, a call to the living shaped by the dead. In the markets, stalls display bread and vegetables again, though not in abundance. People bargain, coins clinking faintly, but their eyes dart to the edges of the tables, as if fearing they might empty at any moment. The smell of fresh loaves carries through the air, sweet and sharp, but it does not erase the memory of queues stretching into mist, of broth so thin it tasted more of water than of food. Those who survived still measure each meal by what was once absent. At the quays, new ships arrive, some bearing goods, others carrying emigrants still leaving, their faces pale, their bundles small. The waves carry away not only people but the memory of the famine with them, carried to America, to Canada, to Australia. Yet here, in the city they leave behind, the famine remains, carved into the stones, into the air, into every pause in conversation. You walk until night deepens, and the lamps cast long shadows across the cobblestones. It is then you see it most clearly, the famine stretching behind every step, reaching into alleys, clinging to windows, lingering in doorways. It is not gone. It has become part of the city, a presence that cannot be buried, cannot be sailed away. The long shadow lies not only in the graves or the ruins, but in the living who carry it forward. Mothers measure their children's meals with fear, fathers keep coins hidden with care, children grow with stories of hunger pressed into their ears. The famine does not end, it becomes memory, and memory becomes inheritance. As you turn homeward, the mist gathers again, wrapping the streets in grey. The shadow lengthens with it, stretching into tomorrow, into the years ahead. Dublin breathes, but it does so beneath the famine's weight, its long shadow reaching far beyond the hunger itself into every heart that still beats.